Dave here, how are you? I am assembling a CNC machine. You probably know a whole lot more about a CNC machine than I ever will. Now that's fine. You can watch if you want. You may find it's boring for you, but if you haven't done anything with the CNC, or that's been in the back of your mind, or you're only just starting out like I am, you may want to follow along with me. So the machine arrived. They packed it all up for me over in the States. They flew it over on Qantas, and then it arrived here in a dirty big truck with a tailgate lifter on the back. And then I had to get it down here. So I picked it up with my little dingo and just managed to get it down here. It's 320 kilos all up, this particular machine. So you can understand, fair weight for that little machine. I've spent all of this time preparing this room. I've ground the concrete floor, I've put an epoxy finish on it, I've painted all the walls so you guys can get the best experience as I'm going through this process. That's what it's all about. I'm sharing my experiences with you. What does CNC stand for? I thought it was computer navigated cutting, but apparently it's computer numerical control. There you go, that's something that I'd learnt. Something for you guys. So the first thing it tells me, I've got to find a few of these kits, and so I'm slowly opening up boxes. These are 4080 extrusion, aluminium extrusion. I've watched other people put machines together and they're on the ground. I don't like getting down on the ground, hurting my knees. I'm going to assemble everything up here. When it comes time to put it down on the ground, that's when I'll be working from there up again. But I'm going to try and stay on the table as long as I can. Okay, so base assembly. This is a leg you get with my kit, which is an 8-foot long by 4-foot table. This is the leg kit for it. Now you'll get 6 pieces of aluminium 4080. That's a light gauge. It's not the heavy gauge stuff. And you'll find that there are threaded sections in the end of one end, and the other end they are not threaded. But on the other end it does have these little guys here, which are designed for these things to drop into, if I can show you correctly, and they will lock to the top rails. We're not going to do that yet. I'm just showing you around the leg. So I found 6 of these end to end in a box. I opened everything up, and this is actually called a leg section. Now it's part of the leg assembly, but it's not a leg upright. It's the cross member. This is what we're going to build. We've got threaded section in the bottom of this particular leg, and we've got these aluminium plates that have got bolts go up through it, and then the leg screws into that aluminium plate. Up one at a time. It's pretty obvious as you're going through the boxes when you open it up, electrical and computer, something else, something else, something else, motors, and then you'll find these. The thing about being up on a table is I can have things like the foot here hanging out the end and not making the thing jump all over the place. That one leg assembly there has taken me, what, 10 minutes? I'll do the next one and then we'll come back. We have all the legs together. That's great. Now we need to put the support brackets. So this one like so. They're going pretty easy. To there. Then I'll use the square across the back. Bring this up until it's in line with there. Pull that up tight. Don't be scared of giving it to it. That's that one. And then this one. I'm going to check that it's in line. And that's pretty good. And that's where it goes. Tighten this one. Gotcha. I'm going to put the next one, instead of finishing flush with the top here, I'm going to push it down here further, and it's going to be at a set height. And this will support another rail that is in turn going to support the control box for the CNC. So we'll do that now. Remember why I'm doing this? Keep this active. Yeah, not my hair, but whoop, other way around. See, I nearly stuffed up again. Got to keep thinking. Use it or lose it. We've completed all of the leg assemblies. So I've got 2 panels on the ground, so 2 leg sections on the ground, one here, one there. And I've got another one over there waiting. It's going to go up the other end. But now we have to put the control box beam in, or rail, in here. I found the easiest way to do this is to put these bolts and these rolling T-nuts in there. Get one of these, and remember, with the rolling T-nut facing down, slide it in. It doesn't matter which way around this is quite at the moment, because we can just turn it when it's in there. And that one. And then down to there. And I've already got that mark. I've already got the mark down there. So I can slide this in to there. Get the hex. This is going to be a bit tight, but that's okay. That's perfect. Okay, and around to the back. In she goes. Bring it together slowly. And I've got that bottom one ready. And then I can assemble everything else. Gotcha. Now we have to put the 1.6 meter rails across the top here. These are the 1.6 meter lengths. $410 That's in. That's 410 there. That one can go in, like so. And I can put another one in from the outside, and then I can clamp those up. It keeps everything straight, but it also allows this bolt to go in correctly. Gotcha. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to space each one of these rails or joists. If we were calling it a floor frame, I'd call this a floor joist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to space them as per the instructions. It says 400 center to center. Now 400 center to center is the same as 400 outside to inside, or to make it even more accurate so I don't get any creep, I'm going to go 400 to here. From there I'm going to go 800, from there I'm going to go 1200, from there I'm going to go the next one, 12 and 4, 1600, and from there to there 2 meters, and then 2.4. So hopefully that works. And as I'm going, I'm just going to nip up one of the bolts and get it flush with the top. And if you don't get it to the millimeter, I don't think it's going to matter. But as close as you can get it, the more accurate the rest of the machine is going to be. We used to have the same with a house. If the foundations, if the slab was right, the rest of the house is going to be fine. 2.4, and tighten. You may feel a little resistance underneath from the angle braces there. And then the last one is going to be where it's going to be, which will be. I've assembled the bed of the machine, and now it's time to get this bed dead level. One of the important things to do before we go too much further is to release the bottom 2 feet in the center. So this is the center leg support in an 8-foot long bed. We release those back up a little bit so that they're just hanging. Then what we do is we get a level, a dirty big long level of sorts, and we sit it on top of the rail. Underneath, if it's good, if there's no movement, you don't need to do any more, that's great. But if you find there's rocking, if you've got a bit of a harbour bridge kind of affair there, well then you might need to do some adjustment. So down here we have the grub screws on the joining section that locks these 2 sections of 40/80 together. Underneath, same kind of thing. There's another 4 grub screws down there. Release the grub screws so that they're not biting on the right hand side, and then what you can do is you can push down on the 40-80 a little bit because you've released that area there. Oh, making sure also that you release the tension on all of the bolts that are on the braces. If the braces are still held, it's not going to go anywhere. Push down, and then, as I say, you can put a level across it, and then a couple of clamps, a clamp on that joint, a clamp down the end there, and a clamp down the other end. Pull it down tight, and you'll find that will pull it straight. Make sure it's a very strong level. Or something else that's a very solid, substantial straight edge. Then, as you're pushing down, make sure that the joint here is closed up, and tighten up all the grub screws across the bottom. That should be pretty good. Now also then you can move the level just away from the edge and see if it's still straight, and then tighten up the grub screws on the top. Then bring it back, sit it on top, and it'll end up like mine. No movement. That's great. Now the other thing is, we need to do that on both sides, obviously on both lengths of the y-axis, and you're going to have to get used to what an x, a y, and a z-axis are. I'll do that right now. X-axis is a cross. That's our horizontal. When you're in the software even, the x-axis is a horizontal line. The y-axis is a vertical line. So if I was standing at the end of the machine, looking down the machine, whether it's a big machine or a little machine, makes no difference. X is a cross, y is straight down in front of you. It's the long way. Or on a piece of paper, they brought it up, or on a piece of, or on the screen, they bring it up like this, and that's how you see it. But look, I've digressed a little bit. Now we want to make sure that the x-axis 40-80 material is flush with the outside rails as well, so the top of it is dead flat. Remember, we're going to put our spoil board on top of this at the end, and it's got to be flat. Otherwise, the gantry won't be able to do its job. It'll be all over the place, and we'll end up with a rough as guts job underneath, and we'll complain. So I release these two screws here and on the other side, push it down a little bit, and then I'll put this on top, put a clamp over that, pull it back up so it comes flush, and hold it down whilst I tighten those bolts back up in that little carriage there as well. Both sides. Do the same on the other side. Now we need to check that everything is level, so we can work on the end feet and make sure that we get it dead level. The easiest way to adjust is get one y-axis dead level by the outside screw feet to support the legs. Then across the x-axis at the end, you got that x-axis going across at the far end of the machine, we screw that leg up until the level reads perfectly the bubble in the middle. And you can check that as well. Rotate the level around and put it back on and see if it's giving you the same reading. Your level may be out, so you have to make sure of that as well. We're going to do the same process down the other end, across the other x-axis at the far end. Well, it's still the x-axis, but it's the one at the front of the machine. Raise it up, and then we're going to test over on the other side there on the y-axis that that's level. Having done that, and having got all of these cross rails or x-axis rails of a 40-80 on the bed, then we can do some diagonals. And it's always a good idea to check those as you're going through. And that will tell you how good you are. And if you're like mine, it's very good. Now, you can check it both directions, and that just gives you some more cross-referencing. Or that's just a final check to make sure that it's all perfect. Once you've got it like that, then you can lower the center legs back down. This is this middle x-axis leg set. Lower the feet down until they touch the floor, and then tighten the lock nut that locks it back up against that aluminium plate that the leg is actually screwed into. There you go. That's all there is to it. Then you go around and you get a 13mm open end spanner or ratchet ring spanner and put it on these nuts and tighten them all up. And now it's rock solid. It ain't going anywhere. Now that's the 1.6 meter lineal rail, two of them. And I've got the shorter lineal rails there and the rack, I guess, for a rack and pinion drive. Here's some work in these. Beautiful. I think that's going to be a whole lot easier. One at a time. One. Oh, that's not so bad. Two. $26, $27. Now I'm going to slide it all the way to the other end because the 1600 lineal rail has to go down and do this overlap on the join of the main beam here. Now I'm going to tighten those up on the top, and what we're trying to do is make that lineal rail straight. It's a piece of steel for the gantry to roll on. It's not going to be as straight as the 4080. The 4080 is so stiff and straight, it's very strong. We're going to use this as straight edge to pull the lineal rail up in line to be perfectly straight so that the machine, the gantry, will travel beautifully. I'm going to bring it so it's almost to the end. It doesn't have to be perfect, just as long as it's not past the end for this lineal rail, because we're going to have the stops put on there. Now, I get a clamp, and I'm going to clamp the lineal rail to our alignment jig, like so. And I'm going to use the drill to do it to start, and then I'll go over. Now, this is a parallel clamp, so it's going to give even force as I apply the pressure there. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Tighten those up straight away, both of them, making sure there's no gap between the lineal rails as well. What I'm going to do is, to save it tipping over all the time as I'm putting the bolts in, I'm just going to slide my clamp onto there. I'm going to bring it back close to the edge to me, so that when I'm putting the bolts in, the end of my dome head Allen key can spin. Here I've been calling these Allen keys. A lot of people will know these as hex wrench. So yeah, I always knew it as an Allen key. So another little tip, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the screw in, put the Allen key on behind it, put the T-nut on, and then push back and then spin maybe 2 or 3 times. That way it doesn't cross thread. First things first, make sure that we have the geared section of this piece facing down. Sliding it in, we're going into the bottom section below the lineal rail, and I found that if I just hold the first one out a little, it's fine, and I'm supporting with my hand back here, just steering it in. This goes in pretty easy. Now that I've said that, it's going to be a problem, isn't it? This is down a little bit, and I'm also going to have to move it along a little. So I'm going to put this piece of gear rack here, and you'll see that it's not looking too good, but if I push it up, it starts to mesh everything, and that's opened that gap up. I'm going to tighten this one up straight off. When I pull this tight, it's going to lock it in. That's got in. Now I can go along and nip them all. And as I say, I put them in with the drill, and I go along after with the Allen key. This is the riser assembly. Now, before we have to do the riser assembly, we need to put the linear bearing blocks in. Now, these things are basically a carriage that takes grease with it along and lubricates the track as the gantry tracks along the bed. So this one is going to go in first, and as I say, it will get rid of the plastic. Now, the reason being, there's all the bearings in there. If you got rid of this plastic first, all the bearings would fall out. So you've got to be careful. There we go. Don't you love it? Now I've got to grease them. Now we've got to install the bumpers on the end of the lineal rails, or on the end of the 4080 that is supporting the lineal rails. These things are designed to stop the gantry going straight off the end, crashing on the ground, which could be expensive. I like them being red. Warning, warning, danger. Don't go off the track. So the bumper is facing back that way. Obviously, as the gantry comes down this way, it'll hit this and soften the blow. If it does decide to want to take off, it ain't going anywhere. That's impressive, isn't it? Okay, a few more bolts or screws in there. There we go. And the bumper. Watch your fingers as you're coming down that last part. Done. I'm going to come around the back and tighten them all up. Gear rail is in position and locked down. The top lineal rail is in position. I've used the jig to set it in position, and I did that actually in a different order to what happened in the instructions. I took the gear rail off, then I used the jig to hold the lineal rail in position. I put the gear rail back on. I put the bottom lineal rail on. I haven't tightened up, that's loose. The top one is tight and fixed in position. Then I've put the lineal bearings on, and I've adjusted the grease nipples so that I can get to them with the grease gun when I'm going. And now I'm going to put the caps in over the screws. This guy here is called the gantry plate. So I can nip that up. And it's going to hold it in position. That was the last one. So now we'll be able to roll this along and tighten the bolts at the bottom to get them into the right position. That lets that do this. Now we're going to rotate that ever so slightly, and we're going to get this bolt assembly. You got the two washers, washer, spring washer, and then it's going to go down through the top like so. Rotate this one up here, and then it will be going into that nut. That's touching it now. I have to do 3 rotations of this clockwise. So I line up something that I can see. So I've got the 13. I'll rotate it 3 times. The motor on. Drop that down into the hole, like so. Get it in a few turns. Use your tummy. Use your stomach to hold it in. Careful not to score anything. And then that can go in to there. So that rocked on nicely, and a couple of bolts. These guys, I think, and start turning slowly. Beautiful. And a washer and a nut. Can't be much easier than that. I'll give it a nip, and I'm going to put it in the center of the track. This is going to go all the way down the center. I'm going to attach this with the bolts coming up. Now they need to be 2 of these holes apart. So my Allen key is the right spacing. So I'll go approximately, is the right spacing, approximately should I say. Like so. But so far, I've been very clever. Or very lucky, one or the other. Look at that. Beautiful. 2 more to go. Look, there it is. How cool is that? This is the one that's got to go in the tray. And this one comes up and mounts to there. Okay, so that's that and that's that. And then I need to put 2 bolts up through into there. Done. That's that. I've totally finished the assembly of the machine. Next thing I have to do is I've got to get the box on, the control box, and I've also got to look at putting the spindle on the Z-axis. But the machine itself is ready for cabling. So that's the next thing we've got to do, is the cabling. Now you need to print out the X, Y, and Z axes and limiting switch points, and this all might sound really hard, but it isn't. I'm going to make life easy, and I will slide a piece of dowel right down the middle. And in the old days, electrical terms, we'd call this a mouse. So we would slide that in. It's come out the other side. I'm going to connect the 2 cables, and one will be to the Y-axis motor through there to the heavy cable, and also I'm going to run through there the lighter cable, which will go to the limiting switch on the X-axis, remember this one here, that will tell the machine, stop, don't go any further. So there will be a cable and a switch here. I'll show you that switch. Let's put that in right now. So there's 6 of these in total that you're given. There's 2 of these and that. Now, the green section is the sensor. It goes towards the action, okay? Don't face it away, face it in. See, like this one down here? It's faced in. This is the Y-axis. I don't want to confuse you, but I'm just telling you what's happening. In the end is a male set of pins. Now, the easiest way to put this on is to start a nut there, slide her in, and then a nut on the other side. And they say to come back about 4 millimeters from the bumper. It will sense metal coming up to it. It says it will sense aluminium to a certain distance and steel to a certain distance. So we're just going to pop it there for the moment. I'll tighten the other side up a little bit, not too much. Now, I need to get the cable for this and the cable for that through the gantry. This Y negative switch is here. The Y positive switch is at the other end. X negative, X positive. I've got to put another switch over there. That's going to be the X positive, and this is the X negative that I've already put in. X negative. And I'm going to put that on this cable. Okay, that's my mouse built. In it goes. And I'll feed it through like so to make sure that I've got cable that's okay there. Come around to this side and it should pull out nicely. There it is. Cables, hello! Okay, then I can take this off now. Done. Thank you very much, Mr. Mouse. Now, whilst they're there, we may as well hook them up. So this is the Y motor. And spin around like so. That's done. I'll rotate this. Now remember, there is a tiny, tiny keyway there, and inside the receiver, and the receiver is just there. So I'm going to rotate that. It's just there. Can you feel it? We tighten it up slowly. That locks that on. Tighten this up a little. Feed that back into there so we don't have things hanging out. That's looking kind of neat. We can feed this one back as well. And I think I may also put a zip tie around that. We will slide that onto there. And that's it. This one, round through here. So it just missed it, but that's okay. Tidy it up. There. Okay, now you can see down the bottom here what I've done. I've zip tied it. I've took it inside the brace and put it inside the channel. And then I've gone inside the edge and right the way along, a zip tie in the center, either end. And that should keep out of the way. I may end up putting something here as a shroud to protect this, because that's sitting proud of everything that's going to happen in this garage. Oh, here's something else I need to tell you. I'm going to use this camera. Down the end here, I presumed I'd be able to have this almost up against the wall. You can't do it. The reason being, as the gantry comes down the Y-axis, I'm going to keep talking in things in that manner, Y-axis, the cable track, which is dropping into the cable track tray, whoop, we've got stuff going everywhere there, is going towards it. It's halving the distance all the time, obviously. And that we're going to come up to the bumper, which is there. So it's hit the bumper on the back of the gantry support down here. That's missed. The cable tray at the back of the gantry as well is there. And this will also allow me to run a 4-inch dust line up and across to the middle, and I'll have a flexible hose coming down onto the top of that spindle. So I'm going to keep on plodding along. It was important to take this off because it's only this high off the ground and I can't get under there and see that. So I've sat it up on a piece of timber. I will end up getting the other one up here as well after I finish doing all the gantry moving. I didn't want the second one up here at the moment because moving the gantry forward, backwards and forwards along the Y-axis, I would have knocked it off and stuffed my cables up. So there we go. I'll keep doing this, and then the next part to do will be to put the spindle on. Once I've got the control boxes on, I wanted to tidy up all the cables. So I've looped them all up one at a time, and I zip tied them individually to this bottom rail. Now, one of the other things is, in the instructions that I had, it said to mount this rail here 300 millimeters down from the top of that leg to the underside of the rail. I mounted it there, and then once I put the cable rack tray in position, I thought it'd be a good idea to try and raise these boxes up because all of these cables were hitting the ground, and I thought that wasn't too good. So I ended up changing the dimension from 300 to 120 from the top of the leg to the top of that support rail for the control boxes. And that's a whole lot better. It doesn't interfere with anything. Everything works perfectly at that height, and it just snuck these boxes up a little bit more. Note, to do that I had to undo the diagonal braces as well and then redo all of those. So that's fine. But the main thing here is that all of these are done. One of the other things that you have to do, if it's for Australia, you have to get the plug changed over. This will come with an American plug on it. This is the power supply for this box. It's going to run fine on a 10 amp circuit, even though they say it's a 3 horse. that's fine because it's 2200 watts, which is still in the scope of a 10 amp circuit for Australia. So get someone to do that for you, because the wiring code in this cable is going to be different to the Australian code. And just to give you a rough idea, green is earth, so earth is green, ground. The black wire is their active or hot wire, and the white wire is the neutral. So that's just going to give you a heads up. If you have to get it done, I'll leave it to you. All right, that's going to get plugged in. And also, down the end here, I don't know if you can see it, just here, even though it says 110 volts, inside the box there's two switches on the transformers that allow for 220 volt or 110. They should be switched over. You can sneak a look inside with a mirror, because they're right up against the cabinet, and check that they're 240 or 220. And even though it says 110 on the front, it will work both. But check that before you turn it on. Alrighty, next thing to do is to put the spindle on. One of the other things I've done, you'll notice here, I've actually written what that cable is. This is the slave sensor. So this one is called the slave, and they would tell you to use a color-coded cable or a color-coded tape around that. Now, I'm not that smart, so I've done all around. I've actually written on the cable what it is, and also underneath here as well, rather than trying to remember what a color code means as well, on top of everything else that I'm learning at the moment. Okay, into the spindle. Here we go. Okay, into the home straight. I've got the spindle, and be aware it is a fair weight, but not overly heavy. It came really well packaged in this expanded polystyrene foam container in a snug fit in a cardboard box. Now there's the kit to mount the spindle, and the instructions to mount the spindle as well were in the PDF that I got from the site, from CNC router part site. There is a section, this works with two systems. It will work with the spindle and it will work with the router. When I'm talking about the instructions are for the spindle and the router, you will open up at the beginning. If you've got the spindle, you look at it and you'll say, where's this round section to hold the spindle? That's relating to the router. It's not about the spindle at all. Move on a few pages and then you'll see the part about doing the spindle. And this will be the first page. It's page number 12. I'll put it to that camera there. And away you go. It's not that hard really. I'm bolting a plate on. All I'm doing is bolting a plate on. But make sure you get it in the right spot with the right holes. There you go. It's a good idea to bring with you the Allen key. I need to put this one in. I'm going to make sure that I get this on correct. Now on the front here, you'll see there's two arrows. Now the arrows on the front of the spindle, and the spindle cable must line up. Gotcha. Good. Turned the machine on. I haven't turned the spindle on yet, but I'm doing a motor test. I've just downloaded Mach 3. It was very easy. Now, I'm going to do what's called jogging, I think. Now, if I use the cursor keys down here, hopefully I'll be able to get the gantry to go up the Y-axis, and I might be able to do some X-axis as well. Here we go. You ready? Hop! It's alive! Look at that, and across. Amazing. And back to me, and across the other side. Back to the proximity sensors. What do you think of that? I could play with this all day, just going backwards and forwards. It's a robot. Go on, off you go. Fetch, go fetch. Oh, this is brilliant. What about the Z-axis? Will that go up and down? Give me a second. How do I do that? Z-axis. Surely. I don't know how to get the spindle to go up and down. I'll read up and find out. I'm going to do it again. And across. That's enough for me today. I love it. I love it, I love it, I love it.